Have you ever been told that a catcher, regardless of how historically bad he might be at hitting, is worth it just because of his defense? And then you come to realize that when they're talking about defense, they're not even talking about throwing guys out or preventing wild pitches. They're talking about play calling. I have. I am an Astros fan. I hear that all the time with Martin Maldonado. And it infuriates me so much because it's hard to quantify that, right? Usually when a pitcher struggles, it's because the pitcher's not doing good. Not because of the catcher's play calling. But when a pitcher succeeds, for some reason it's a norm to give credit to the catcher when the catcher is just as uninfluential usually in both scenarios. And it's not like there's a metric for this, right? There's no play calling metric. There's a blocking metric. There's the throwing metric. But there's no play calling metric because you need something to compare it with. And usually a lot of pitchers just work with the same catcher. So you don't have any outside data to compare this to. So it's really hard for that. So today I designed not a metric but an experiment to isolate pitchers who work significantly better or significantly worse with certain catchers than otherwise. And you can follow along with me. The code is on the link here in the QR code or in the description down below on GitHub. It's free. And I'm just going to walk through the files that you're going to download if you do choose to follow along. Just so, transparency. Here's the sample data. This is real data from the 2020 MLB season. This is not the sample data. This is the sample data, the literal sample data file. It's a CSV. You can see all this. These are real data from StatCast that I downloaded. And then I isolated a few certain ones just to, just for the experiment, because there is a lot of data, and this already takes a long time to run. So if I had the whole season, that would have been catastrophically long. So that's just real MLB data. This is WOBA weights. If you guys know how WOBA is calculated, like here, these weights actually change by the year. So I took the ones from 2020 because that's the season that our data is from, and I dropped it in here so that we can use for the stat calculator. This is what I wrote a while ago to calculate WOBA. So if you give a list of events like single, double, triple, strikeout, that, and then you just dump it in there, they'll tell you the WOBA of that sequence. And the same thing with OPS. And this is used because we have this right here. Alright, moving on to the code. And before I walk through the code with you, I'm going to walk through the experiment with you. So what we have is a bunch of data. Let's run our data first. MLB sample, just so you guys can see what it kind of looks like. This is the index that I probably should have removed already, but whatever. This is the pitch type, the game date. Release speed is just how fast it was thrown, who was hitting, who was playing what, who was the hitting team, whatnot. And then if you look at events and catcher and pitcher, you can see right here, okay, sometimes there's no events because, a pitch just does not get hit or something. That's just not a thing. Clayton Kershaw, Austin Barnes, Framber Valdez. Hey, it's our buddy Martin Maldonado, Zach Gallen, Stephen Vogt. Stephen Vogt, Diamondback. These pitches were not hit. Let's look at events that actually did happen. Events. And the reason why I don't want to leave this out is because later we're going to shuffle these. So, yeah. Field out, strikeout, field out, double play, double, strikeout, single. So that's our sample data here. We have 2,930 rows with that. And what we're going to do is for each pitcher, we're going to isolate for each pitcher. And then we're going to shuffle the catcher labels 1,000 times. And we're going to have something called a test statistic. And that's what we're going to calculate for each simulation. And the simulation basically is when you shuffle the labels. And our test statistic today is going to be WOBA difference and OPS difference. So what's the WOBA when the catcher is not catching versus when the catcher is catching? And we're going to do this with every pitcher-catcher combination. So let's say Clayton Kershaw is the pitcher here. We're going to shuffle his catcher labels. And then we're going to say, okay, Will Smith, here's your test statistic. Here's your WOBA difference when you weren't catching versus when you were catching. And then same thing with Austin Barnes. And it's not always like the same on each side, because sometimes there's a third catcher. So it's like Will Smith versus anyone else, or Austin Barnes versus anyone else. I hope I explained that correctly. I explained it correctly. I hope I explained it fluently or directly enough. And we're going to do that same thing with OPS as well, because I know some of you guys like OPS better. I personally like WOBA better, but, to each their own. What I can't do is ERA, because you can't shuffle double, 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 and sometimes that's 3 runs. Sometimes that's no runs. You can have a double and then a caught stealing and then a double and a caught stealing and then another double. So we're going to do context-independent stats like WOBA and OPS. And then significant tells us later on. So after we get 1,000 shuffles for each catcher-pitcher combination, we're going to have something that looks like this. And that's our null distribution. The idea here is that, since we shuffled the catcher labels randomly, each of these possibilities are a possibility under the assumption that the catcher didn't matter. Because the catcher didn't matter in these situations. We shuffled it randomly. And significant tells us, if our real life calculation was feasible or not. So in a case like this, where the catcher, where the actual observation is like right down the middle, we're like, okay, well, half the times we get better and half the times we get worse from this. So that's not really, and that's under the assumption that the catcher didn't matter. So clearly the catcher didn't really make a difference. And, or sometimes we have one that's way out here and we're like, okay, we shuffled the catcher and we tried 1,000 different times to see if we could get anywhere close to what actually happened. And we couldn't. So that means something probably did happen here that was part of the catcher-pitcher tandem. And that's just our helper methods. This is what we're going to do with the data. So filter pitcher. Honestly, this is not really needed, but I wanted to isolate pitchers with at least 20 different plate appearances with different catchers. Just because, if it's a pitcher that only actually pitched with one catcher, then it's like, well, we have nothing to compare it to because there's no other data. So I don't think anyone got filtered here, but when I was working with all the data, not just sample data, all the data, I had to do that because Framber Valdez this year only worked with Martin Maldonado. So if I try to compare it, then I'm going to get an error. And then here, this part, you don't have to worry about it. It looks like a lot of code, which it kind of is, but this is just to give us a summary of the data. This is to isolate only the parts that we need, because you don't want to keep all that data when you're shuffling. That's going to be a lot of computational work. This only isolates catchers who've caught more than 20 plate appearances with the pitcher. So this might not be part of it, because if I had a pitcher who worked with 3 catchers and he did 20 with Austin Barnes, 20 with Will Smith, but 3 with, I don't know, another Dodgers catcher, well, I don't want to include the guy with just 3 in here. So we're going to take him out. We're not going to check for him, even though we could, and he'll just be, unsignificant, just because there's a lot of variation with only 3 plate appearances. But we didn't want to waste our time with that, so we just took it out. And then simulations, this is where we're gonna store the test statistics for each catcher pitcher combination for each simulation. I hope that makes sense. So this is gonna be a dictionary here. So it's gonna be the pitcher is here, it's isolated. So let's say Clayton Kershaw, because that's the only one that I can remember for some reason. Clayton Kershaw is our pitcher here. We're gonna shuffle the catchers. So this is gonna be the dictionary to Austin Barnes is a list of 1,000 different test statistics. The dictionary to Will Smith, 1,000 different test statistics, and we're gonna shuffle 1,000 times only for each pitcher. So we're gonna have 1,000 different realities instead of saying, okay, I'm gonna shuffle 1,000 times for Will Smith, 1,000 times for Austin Barnes. That's gonna be 2,000 different realities. I just want 1,000 different realities, and I want to calculate the differences for each catcher in that same reality. And then, yeah, we're just going to do that, and then it's going to give us our code. So let's run these. And this takes around 7 minutes, so I'll see y'all in 7 minutes. By the way, this is a type of hypothesis testing in data science called A/B testing. A/B testing is when you shuffle the categories and get a null distribution, and then compare it to that and get your p-value. And yeah, that's basically what we did here. In this case, we shuffled the catcher labels, got our test statistic, use it to get a null distribution, as you can see here, and form a hypothesis. Not hypothesis. Yeah, it's 12 o'clock basically. I'm sorry. All right, our code finally finished. I don't know how long it took, but it'll be right here because I recorded the whole thing. And let's see what we have. Sample summary. We have, oh look, Clayton Kershaw worked with Austin Barnes and Will Smith in 2020. This is their stuff. I mean, it's hard to like look through the sea of numbers, but the summary here is that it was not significant. Here's the histogram. Actually, I don't have the histogram, but it's somewhere close enough to the middle where we could say it's not significant. Johnny Cueto, he actually did have a more significant time with Joey Bart than the others, but it's false for the others because there was 3, so it's like he did worse. He had a much lower WOBA without Joey Bart, so he did significantly worse than the other catchers. But the other catchers were close enough to the middle versus Joey Bart, who was just way at the end. Kendall Graveman, he did significantly worse with Austin Nola than he did with Luis Torrens or someone else. There could be a third catcher here who had less than 20 plate appearances. Lucas Giolito, he did better with James McCann, worse with the Yasmani Grandal. Lucas Sims, nope. Oh, his OPS actually is true, but his WOBA is not. So that's a fun thing for you WOBA versus OPS geeks to figure out. It looks really bad here. So he did really bad OPS wise with Curt Casali. He did just somewhat worse in WOBA with Curt Casali. Max Scherzer, nope, he's Gucci. Rick Porcello, yeah, he did a lot better with Wilson Ramos than he did with Robinson Chirinos. But Robinson Chirinos is false. Robinson Chirinos didn't make him worse or anything. It's just Wilson Ramos made him better. Austin Barnes with Tyler Glasnow. Oh, Ross Stripling. Okay, I was like, huh. So Ross Stripling had 4 different catchers, and he did worse with Austin Barnes than he did with the other 4. Did he get traded with mid 2020? Tyler Glasnow, nope, he's good. Zach Gallen, nope, he's good too. So this is specific, right? It's not like a certain catcher is bad at play calling versus a certain catcher is good at play calling. It's a certain pitcher is doing significantly better or significantly worse with a certain catcher than without that catcher. It's specific to those 2 combined, the pitcher and the catcher. A pitcher can be doing better with a certain catcher, but not worse with a different catcher, just better with one specifically. And a catcher can just have, I mean, here, Austin Barnes, he's holding Ross Stripling back, but there's no difference here with Clayton Kershaw. So it's specific to the pitcher and the catcher. And that's all I have to say. This is a 30-minute recording. I need to shower. And And I have a lot of these in the vault that I would love to release. Again, if you guys want to try this yourselves, you guys can download the code. Link is in the description, and QR code again. You literally don't have to write any code. You can just run the whole thing, and it does it all for you. That's the way I like it. I like it so you guys could just run it down. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time.